Hi folks, and welcome back to the plot. 31 degrees. It is gorgeous, and in fact I'm the only person on site today. It's about 4 o'clock, so it's starting to cool down, but it is still scorching in the tunnel. I tell you what, allotments will teach you a couple of things. One I always think is patience. We'll talk about that because it's still a slow year, but I'm very happy with the tomatoes, which is what I want to show you today. But the other thing, I love of trees in summer. The number of times I've had people tell me that I should get rid of this cherry tree because it doesn't really grow any cherries. And I tell you what, in summer, this is my saviour. I absolutely love it. The shade and the cool and the respite it offers on a day like today, priceless, literally priceless. I love it. But let's talk about the tomatoes, shall we? I think what I'll do first is a little bit of a tour, and then I'll take you through a little bit of, watering, feeding, what I've been doing this year so far. How have we got to this stage? Oh, the heat coming off this tunnel. You can see the cucumbers have all gone crazy. And this one right here in the foreground, the first one you see, miles and miles ahead of everything else. This is my best tomato this year. And this one is the Black Moon. It's looking really, really healthy. And I'll start by saying I've not had any tomato problems this year, really. Everything has gone super smooth compared to some years. I tell you what, stuff in the tunnel has grown fantastically. I've not seen any wilting, no real issues. I've started taking off a few of the bottom leaves, sort of towards the bottom, and you can see, some people say you shouldn't do this, but I just tend to chuck mine on the ground. I think it'll rot down nicely, go back into the soil. Obviously, if you're seeing issues on your leaves, then you probably don't want to do that just in case there's any nasties. But look at the trusses on here. Really, really cool. Absolutely cannot wait. They're still, these are miles away from actually ripening. The Black Moon go to a lovely dark red colour, but it's just starting. It's just starting to look really good. And what I am seeing a lot of this year, and what I'm seeing a lot of on other people's gardens, is this, the leaves kind of restarting at the end of the truss, and you can just snip those off. It's nothing really to worry about, but it's happening on an awful lot of mine for whatever reason this year. I said I haven't really had any issues this year, but there are a couple of plants just not growing very well, and they're here, in fact. It's this one and this one. What I've got in terms of layout is a 20-foot long by 10-foot tunnel. There's a whole story to this polytunnel, but I have absolutely crammed the tomatoes in, and I was worried that this was going to be a bit silly. We've got 1, 2, 3 in each row, and then I've got how many? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 11 rows. So you can see they're kind of crammed in quite close, and I do wonder if that's what's caused the issue on this plant in particular, which is an Alice's Dream. There's a few fruit on here forming, but it's just a bit stunted. It just doesn't look quite right, this plant. And the one behind it, that one is an Indigo Blue Chocolate. And similar, just a bit stunted compared to everything else that you'll see. Once again, not the end of the world. Got some good fruit on here, a few side shoots. I will say I have been pretty attentive this year, I think. I'd give myself a pat on the back for my side shoots. Generally, I've been getting them and quite attentive. But aside from those two, everything else is looking really, really healthy. And for the varieties this year, I paired everything. So you'll see sort of this one, for example, just here is a Black Moon. And then this one next door is also a Black Moon. And then next to that, we've got this, the Aperro. And oh my goodness, look at that for a truss. That is a truss and a half, isn't it? And the descriptor for this did say it was an incredibly prolific grower, and that is very true. Some nice trusses up top, and in fact this is the first ones just starting to ripen, which is very exciting. One thing I do with the side shoots sometimes, if I see that they've gone to a truss at the end, I just leave them and you get a few extra tomatoes. It's sort of like a free truss off a side shoot. I showed you the stunted Alice's Dream, but because we've got the pairings, it's fantastic. This one is a healthy Alice's Dream, so it's really good being able to see how tall and healthy this one looks compared to its kind of sibling, if you like. Down there, the stunty sad one, the runt of the litter. Alice's Dream is a really exciting new variety for me. There is some weight on these, some nice big salad tomatoes. What is going on? These look absolutely beautiful, and just behind that one, look, there's a proper beast coming. Really good size. I mean, it's not a proper beast, but that is a good chunky tomato, and there's a few on there. I wouldn't say it's super prolific, but we've got another truss that's set. This leaf has grown downwards quite a bit, but it looks generally like a much healthier plant. Got another kind of third truss coming up there. A few of them do look a little bit spindly, you know, like that stem is not looking like a super strong, vigorous one. Like, compare that to this black moon that we looked at right at the start. That is a nice, chunky, healthy stem. So there's a few where they've just got slightly weak stems, and I think that's probably because I've strung them up with twine that goes all the way around. So I'm giving these plants a lot of support, and they don't need to grow their own kind of strength. They can rely on this string, which maybe isn't the best. But in the same way the Alice's Dream was paired, the Indigo Blue Chocolate also has a little pairing here and a sibling that is looking really healthy. We're just gonna step outside for a second so I can cool off. Oh, there's a breeze today that is just sent by the gods. Absolutely wonderful. But that Indigo Blue Chocolate, my best tasting tomato last year. I'll link somewhere the tomato tasting video that I did last year, where I sort of ranked all of my tomatoes, and there's a lot I did last year which actually, in fact, I'm not growing this year. A lot of new varieties. But the Indigo Blue Chocolate, I had a runty plant, a bit like the runty Alice's Dream we just looked at. My Indigo Blue Chocolate, really unhealthy, and I only got 2 tomatoes, not 2 trusses, 2 tomatoes, 2 actual tomatoes. The just most divine, lovely tomato flavour that I've ever experienced. And of course, typically that's the one where you only get 2. So I'm hoping this year they are going to be stars of the show. Okay, venturing back into this tropical heat. Oh, it actually feels quite nice. This just behind this Aperro is what we'll look at next. These Aperro though, I've never seen a truss like this. That is absolutely staggering. And this is an F1 variety, and it's one of those where you get 6 seeds, or like 6 or 10 seeds in a packet, you know, if you're lucky. This is from Chiltern Seeds, and they described it as the best tasting cherry tomato on the market. So we're gonna see, we're gonna find out. I can't wait to start tasting. Behind the Aperro, we have a very, oh no, nightmare, I'm sorry, Aperro. This is one of the issues with, well, A, filming YouTube videos, but B, growing things so close together, you know, when you've got to get in, maybe do a bit of weeding or like snap off a sucker. This time of year, you're going to start knocking off those tomatoes, so you've got to be really careful. But this one actually looks incredibly healthy for the variety it is, because this is the Brad's Atomic. I think a Brad's Atomic Fusion, but normally these grow so spindly and strange, and I must say, I think that looks like a pretty healthy tomato plant, actually looking really normal. And its sibling over here, I'd say the same thing. We've got a nice truss up here, just setting. Let's have a little look further down. Oh, yes. Oh, well, I was gonna say, oh yes, maybe, oh no. This is the first bit They heard me at the start when I said I've not had any problems. This is the first bit of dieback I've had on any of the leaves. And you always get worried, don't you, with tomatoes. I think this is probably just maybe dried out a little bit, and it's gone a bit crispy and then died. The rest of the leaf looks really healthy, but you're always conscious of blight and bacterial infections with tomatoes. So I've just touched that, and I'm not going to now be touching any of my leaves. I'm going to go wash my hands. I'm going to snip that off and get rid of any damaged stuff, and then show you that amazing looking truss down there. Now, to be fair, if any of the tomato plants are going to go a little bit bad and a little bit funky, freshly washed hand, don't worry, it's going to be your Brads. They're just a bit temperamental. They're a little bit strange, but down here you can see, look, they're so glossy. Such a gorgeous, gorgeous tomato. Not my favourite eater last year, but I'm hoping they're going to be a bit nicer this year. We'll see. And just while I'm down here, worth noting, a little bit messy. Could do with maybe a little bit of a hoe. This has had a really good horse manure mulch, but some of the weeds are starting to poke through now. You'll see this little plank of wood as well, and I've got a few of those around, A, for slugs, and B, for distributing my weight if I do need to get in here and prune off any suckers or anything like that. Now, behind the Brads, This one is a really strong grower. Look at this, really nice height, looking like a nice healthy tomato. Now my label for this one and the one next to it says Black Russian, but these are cherries. So I think I might have had a little bit of a labelling mishap there, but we're gonna see what happens. Some really nice fruit just starting down here, and it's like a big cherry, I would say. They're not small cherries, but if that's a Black Russian, I thought Black Russian was a salad tomato, so I thought they were meant to be pretty chunky, but we'll see. I have had another labelling mishap that you'll see as well, but you know, it's part of the course, isn't it? Things go wrong, but absolutely fantastic. Look at this. Isn't that picture perfect? Look at that truss. This is amazing, and this is one I've grown before. This is a Cherolla, another F1 cherry. I grew this 4 years ago, my first ever season growing on the allotment, and it was fantastic. I had it in a greenhouse and it was like growing up out through the window, and it was just fantastic. This one looking pretty good, but its neighbour, its sibling, can you see the difference in this kind of leaf growth? I don't know why, but this one is just much stronger. Way taller, much thicker stem. Wait, is this... Oh, let me check my labels. No, these two are the same. So this is two Cherollas. It's interesting how much variation you can get in, you know, plants that were started in the same time and all that kind of thing, gone into the same ground basically, but just slight variation. Must have, you know, set one back and one has had a much better time. These two behind those are black strawberry. Oh, the probably prettiest tomato I've ever grown. This is one I did last year, and I saved lots of my own seeds, so I had hundreds of these seedlings. Really good. Oh, that one back there, looking stupendous, the black strawberry. Once again, last year, not my favourite eater. The texture wasn't fantastic. Got a little bit of a sort of unhappy looking leaf. Probably prune those off. I'm due for another pruning, I think, but they'll be okay, I think. I'm not too concerned. At the back here, we've got two Paul Robeson. Now, these were sent by Real Food Comes Dirty, Audrey, from America. And first time I've ever grown these. They're meant to be amazing flavour. And that is some really healthy fruiting. Look at those nice, sort of handheld fruits, you know. You can just sort of, one of those in the hand is going to be stunning. Very excited. Meant to have a bit of a smoky flavour. I'm quite intrigued by that. Can see once again though quite a lot of variation in the pears there. Two Paul Robeson, one looking much stronger than the other. Not sure what that's about. I hadn't really noticed that until today. Now we've got another cherry over here. This one is the black cherry. Another one from my first year of growing. These are like 4-year-old seeds. They've come good though, and loads of fruit, looking really nice and healthy. Got another one here. These two siblings look pretty similar. Not too much to distinguish between those. But behind those, I've got two mystery chilies. No, I haven't. They're tomatoes, JB. Two mystery tomatoes. One here and one there. God, you can actually barely see this one. They're growing into each other quite a lot. Just, I think, due a bit of pruning. Look, this is getting all caught up. But some pretty spindly plants actually down this end of the tunnel. It does get a little bit spindlier. This one looks very healthy though. These two are meant to be black opal, which once again I thought was a salad tomato, but these are looking kind of cherry sized. Maybe they're just due to get much bigger. Maybe they're only just starting, but let's look closer down to the bottom. That to me is looking like a cherry, so maybe the black opal is a cherry as well, and actually it's looking like I'm not going to have many salad tomatoes this year. Whoops. And then the final row, the last bit, and you can see how much smaller these are. They did go in a little bit later than the rest, but they are flying away now. This, the Tim's Taste of Paradise, meant to be absolutely phenomenal tasting cherry. Very excited by that one. The Lithium Sunset, amazing looker and meant to taste really good too. And then at the back, we've got a bit of a classic. That one is just a Tomande, a lovely big one. And you might have noticed, maybe not, because it's a little tricky to tell. But the idea has been to grow the cherry tomatoes, the taller, sprawling tomatoes, right along the path, and then what were meant to be all the salad tomatoes and the beefsteaks at the back. But it looks like a lot of what I thought were going to be the big salads and the beefsteaks are actually, you know, turning into cherries. So that's not ideal. But you can see some of those bottom fruits just starting to turn. I'm so excited. There are tomatoes elsewhere though. There's a few others on the plot to show you. Now I garden on the south coast of the UK. It's generally meant to be a bit of a Goldilocks zone for the UK, you know. We get much milder winters, early spring, much warmer temperatures. And so a lot of the time I get comments saying, JB, why don't you grow more tomatoes outdoors? You know, you've got loads of space outdoors, just chuck a few tomatoes in. And I have, there's a few here. They're okay. This is like a green doctor in a goat bag, an incredible name for a tomato. And there is one stonker of a fruit on this green doctor, I think this one is. But you can just see the difference between something like this and something that's grown undercover. There are a series over here of more outdoor focused tomatoes. So these are pretty much all Roma, and this is just chaos. It's very difficult to differentiate, but there are 1, 2, 3, 4 tomato plants in here with a few cucumbers and some basil and another cordon tomato that is in dire need of stringing up. Look at that, that's neglectful, JB. I'll tie that in and give it some support in a second. That one is another Aperro actually, so it'll be interesting to see how well that cherry does outside. But you can see these Roma, they're bush tomatoes, and I'm just gonna let them go, and it's gonna be chaos. They're right up against this greenhouse. It's gonna be tricky to access. We're starting to get some nice trusses on here. Just a few little baby fruit forming, and I'm hoping we'll get a good harvest. But once again, you can see the size difference. Once again as well, they did go in a little bit later, so not comparing like for like with what you've seen in the Polytunnel there, but there's some more undercover. There's some more in here, in this greenhouse. Once again in the ground. I'm not doing any tomatoes in pots this year. These are all just in the ground, and this is obviously cucumber. But behind, hidden, we have a host of tomatoes, and these are just wild. You know, these are packed into this greenhouse, and they don't mind, but I do. It's quite difficult to film. It's quite difficult to keep on top of them. They're going a little bit wild, a little bit crazy. I've not supported these the best. There's a little bit of a ramshackle cane structure, but we're just gonna leave them to it and we'll get some harvests, I'm sure. And what we have in here variety-wise are 3 Rosella. Now the reason they're in here, these were sort of some of the lower priority ones, you know, the ones I was less excited about. And I thought Rosella was a green tomato, and I was getting it mixed up with Tigerella. And actually Rosella is meant to be an amazing tasting cherry. So I've got 3 of those in here, and they are going bonkers. Look at that, that's the good stuff, isn't it? And behind that I've got a spoon, which was a freebie. Oh no, what is that damage? Can you see that on the spoon? The very weird damage to the leaves. That's weird, isn't it? But the spoon tomato has gone wild. It's gone sprawling absolutely everywhere. It's this super thin, super spindly little tomato, and you get these absolutely miniature fruits. Look at this truss. Look at that compared to my hand. Really cute. In fact, there's one little ripe one here. Look at that, mini. And then, because these are the rejects, there's a few green ones in here that I'm not holding out hope for, the green doctor and the goat bag. But back here, this is exciting. And it's hard to see because this is one of my chili plants, but hidden in here, look at that, a healthy tomato. This is a miracle tomato, and it is the Sart Rolaise. This was a seed that was given to me by Jessie from plot 37, and it nearly died, but it's come back. When I first planted it out, you can see that damaged stem. I cut it or knocked it over or something, and it just split. And thankfully, it's come back, and it's looking healthy. So a tiny little baby tomato, but there's still time, I mentioned at the start that gardening kind of teaches you patience, and I've had my ups and downs this year, you know. It's not been an easy growing year by any means, but I'm not worried in the slightest about how far behind these tomatoes are compared to normal. And that's partly because 90% of people who are watching this video are going to have slow tomatoes this year as well. It's just the season. Tony C. Smith is his massive basket of harvests. It's a testament to A, his experience, but B, also starting with a heated greenhouse. It can really get you that little kick up the butt for your plants early in the season. It'll give them that little bit of a kick start, you know. So we're just on the cusp of harvest, and I'm so excited, absolutely beside myself. And it's crazy, you can see the difference in growth, you know, when you've had a few sunny days, these things will just rocket off. Where we've had such a grey, miserable summer, the temperatures have been cold, you can just see them sometimes not growing quite as fast as they normally would, but Polytunnel has just been absolutely magic for the tomatoes, and it's got a big emotional meaning for me, this Polytunnel, and seeing everything come to life. It's so difficult not to smile when I look at it. And I did want to mention just watering and feeding, because I'm growing in the ground and I've had a really good horse manure mulch. I've barely watered these. Now I am on clay and we've had a lot of rain, and the Polytunnel is large. This thing is 20 foot long, but because it's still connected to the soil, it's about 10 foot wide. So all the rain that does land, it's going to get absorbed into this kind of strip of ground here. And I think actually a lot of that water is going to end up back sort of via osmosis in those beds. And I've not noticed any wilting or any problems associated with lack of water on the tomatoes so far until today. Today I came down, and where it's probably been 40 degrees C plus in this tunnel, maybe even 50, with just a roasting hot day today. They did look a little bit sad, and a lot of my chilies did as well. Even though the chilies were watered, you pick up the pots and they were pretty heavy. Things are still wilting just because it's so hot. And I've got 2 doors for a bit of ventilation, but that's it, no fans or anything in here. So I think just one of those things. And the main thing I'm doing differently this year is my feed. I quite often use a synthetic feed. This year I've switched to organic. I'm using this Tomato Focus, and this has really shocked me in terms of how much feed is recommended on the back of the bottle. It says once or twice a week and 10 millilitres per litre. So this is 5 litres, and you're looking at 100 millilitres in a 10 litre watering can. And it's tricky trying to figure out how much it wants, you know, because obviously one watering can in that whole tunnel does absolutely nothing. So what I tend to do, 3 cans, I wet it first, get the ground ready to kind of absorb stuff. Wet it first, not crazy, just, you know, a couple of cans, or get the hose on just so the top is moist and ready to absorb the feed and the next water. And I will do 2 or 3 cans with this, which is, you know, a lot of feed. That's 300 millilitres, and it goes quick. And then what I do after that, I give it a pretty decent watering. So I'll do a good kind of maybe 5 or 6 cans more to get stuff sinking down into the soil. And I've probably done that maybe more like once a fortnight, certainly not once or twice a week. And so far, all the plants look happy, they look healthy, but it's pretty early days. I can't really tell if the feed is, you know, too much feed, not enough feed, or anything like that just yet. What I will say, if you are switching to organic fertilizer like that, be very careful if you're using anything like autopots, chili grows, quad grows, anything with a reservoir that stays with all that in for a long time in kind of stagnant water, because oh my goodness, it stinks. I used it in the quad grow and it was a big mistake. It absolutely reeks. So I do not recommend using it for that purpose, but straight on a bed, I think maybe a little bit kinder to the soil. Thank you ever so much for joining me. An extra special thank you to all of my Chili Pepper Tier patrons: Tony, Bill, Pam, Louise, Mel, Michael, Denise, Socks in the Garden, Andrew, Sarah, Dorcas or Louise, Angela, Audrey and Brett. Hopefully I'll see you again next time. Well, we might have a few tomatoes to harvest.